This is a lecture from Open Tuition. For the free slides that go with this podcast, please visit opentuition.com.
The shape of the organisation is independent of where power lies within the organisation. You could have two organisations of exactly the same shape and structure, yet in one a particular grade of employee could be given an expenditure authority of only €100, but in another the same grade of person could be given an expenditure authority of €10,000. Decentralisation or centralisation describes how far down the organisation power is passed. Generally, it is agreed that some decentralisation is good, but too much decentralisation can be counterproductive. Claimed advantages are as follows. If nothing is decentralised, all decisions have to remain at the top of the organisation, the managing director or the board of directors, for example. Those people will be overworked. They'll be mixing up trivial decisions with important decisions, and really their skills should be reserved for making important decisions. Secondly, if requests have to be passed up through an organisation for a decision to be made, and then the answers are passed down, decisions are likely to be much slower, so decentralisation adds speed. Third, it might be better to decentralise power to areas of expertise. For example, the best person to make a decision about where to place advertising is somebody in the sales and marketing department, not the managing director who may have come from an accounting or engineering background. Similarly, perhaps the best person to deal with competitive pressures in South America is the head of the South American organisation, not somebody based in London or Paris. The person in South America has local or geographic expertise. Fourth, motivation. Good employees like to make decisions. They like running their own departments or divisions. If you don't decentralise and allow them to have power, the good people will leave. Finally, training and assessment. If you never allow any junior people to make decisions, how will you know who the good ones are and who should be promoted in the future? The big potential disadvantage is poor coordination, sometimes described as dysfunctional decision-making. That's where one division, for example, can make a decision which, although good for it, may harm the organisation as a whole. It might be, for example, that a manufacturing division stops making a part, but that part is vital for somewhere else in the organisation. But poor coordination means it's all messed up. Therefore, there has to be some degree of coordination between the various departments and divisions in an organisation, and this may require the head office or the board of directors occasionally to interfere with the decentralisation and to impose decisions. This slide simply summarises some recent trends in organisational structure. Downsizing has been necessary to keep costs down. Delayering we've discussed recently. Moving towards wider, flatter organisations, both to save costs and to achieve flexibility. Outsourcing hasn't yet been talked about. Outsourcing means getting an outside firm to perform some of your operations. These operations will generally be your support operations. Therefore, it is relatively common to outsource your IT and perhaps your receivables ledger. Many businesses don't make money from the receivables ledger or from their IT. These are, to them, necessary evils. They may make their money from clever engineering or thinking up clever adverts if they're an advertising agency. And the thought behind outsourcing is that firms should concentrate on what they're good at, their core activities, and try to outsource everything else, because those functions are liable to be management distractions. Management should concentrate on where it adds value, where the organisation can make its money. In studying this paper, you'll often come across the concepts of formal and informal organizations. The formal organization is what management has deliberately designed. It's what management knows about, and also it's often written down in some manner. Therefore, management knows about the organization chart. It knows who is manager of a department, who is supervisor, and who works in it. Management will have caused procedures manuals to be written, proper ways of doing things. Staff appraisals, showing which staff may be better, which ones have certain weaknesses, will also be carefully recorded. However, an enormous amount of the organization is informal. This diagram is supposed to depict that, because what it shows in the middle is an iceberg. Only a relatively small part of an iceberg is seen or is known about. By far the greater part of it is invisible, but dangerous. And the thought is that if management is unaware of the informal organization, then they're liable not to be able to manage very well. So, for example, if you have two people who hate each other, but nevertheless are supposed to cooperate according to the organization chart, then that department will not work well. Similarly, although management may issue newsletters and emails to all their staff, rumor and gossip gets round organizations very quickly. It's often inaccurate, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be believed. Group norms is another important example. A group norm is an arrangement people come to, often slowly, about how they should behave. For example, it might be the group norm that nobody ever works past 5 o'clock on a Friday. They've come to this arrangement somewhat slowly, but anyone new joining the organization will generally fall in line. Otherwise they're frightened they're not going to fit in. And once certain group norms have been adopted by a number of people, it can be very difficult for management to shift those norms to something else. All of those people resist together. Mutual cover-up. You make a mistake. Really, it should be reported to your manager, but you have a friend in the other department, and you and your friend agree to conceal that mistake. After all, your friend never knows when he'll need a favor again one day. Management nowadays is generally familiar with the existence of informal organizations. But what it will find very difficult is to understand the nature of the informal organization. What are people's personal ambitions? What alliances have been made? What personal problems or relationships have been formed? What ways have people decided to act that could be wildly different from what's laid down in the procedures manuals?